Hello and welcome to Normal Guy Games again. Please like and subscribe, I'd appreciate it. And so this video, oh boy, this video. I bought myself a box of Escher cutters, and I thought to myself, hey, why don't I film myself painting an Escher cutter and doing a little bit of wet blending and a couple of things that I don't normally do. And I did those things, but, well, you'll see. Let's get into it. So obviously, the first thing we do is make sure the instructions are the right way up. We snip, we cut, we scrape. We do all those things that we have to do when we get a model off the sprue, you know, New Games Workshop model. And of course, we use a little bit of plastic cement. We put it together. Easy enough. Right? So this part is just, you know, obviously I'm not going to sit there and put together all of the models and make you watch me do that. That's not what we do. But I mean, all the basics are here. You can see me putting together, you know, the initial, the jet engine itself. But here is how I usually do these things. So I'll usually put most of these things in piles like this, and as you can see, the rider just kind of clips on, which is kind of a good thing. It's so we can leave the rider separate. But what I'll do is I'll put all of my pieces for each person and each jet bike in one pile, and then I will assemble from there. Now, I have done subassembly before, but this is all subassembly stuff. The paper clips are in the little hole that the pin goes in, the flight stand, and then I put the paper clips on their feet, across their feet as well. Now here, this is when I realized later why I stopped using this camera angle, because the camera doesn't like to quite focus on what I'm doing sometimes. So we have improved that later in the video. I was just trying something new to see if I could make things look a little bit better. So what I'm using here is I use probably about 3 layers of scale 75 paint. Now this is the paint that I got from the Kickstarter. I am very fond of this cobalt violet color. It goes on looking like a kind of a grayish, almost a purplish blue, but when it dries, you get a very almost lavender, like a dark lavender color. And I figured, you know what? The Escher ladies are all about the 80s hair and the loud 80s color scheme, so why don't we start with purple, pinks, yellows, bright colors, because usually I will do everything grimdark, and you know, everything will be kind of dark and dreary and washed down. But for these particular jet bikes, and these things are quite literally a jet engine with a seat on it, and they strapped some weapons to the side. It is literally the most Necromunda vehicle that I have seen, and honestly, I could see House Cawdor using these things too, because they look absolutely ramshackle and unsafe, but at the same time it looks really cool having this jet bike, you know, hovering over the base with a pair of plasma guns, or you know, a pair of heavy stubbers or grenade launchers hanging off of the side. But anyway, so I digress. The scale 75 paint goes on very, very well. It smooths out very nicely, and I am quite fond of this particular color. The red does not go on as well as I would like it to, but it's okay. The pink is a little thin. I'm not sure. I think next time I go for wet blending, I believe I'm going to probably use a different pink or a different color, maybe a blue. I'm probably going to try the scale 75 blue next, because I did get a blue in that little set where this color came from. So all I'm doing here is I am putting that indigo violet color, or I'm sorry, the cobalt violet color on the big flat panels and on the outer edge of the front there. So that's where we're gonna put all that purple color. Now, what I did from there is I went on and I took some of that cobalt violet and a little bit of the rose pink from scale 75, and I put more of the cobalt on the top of the panel, and I took some of that pink and I put it on the bottom of the panel, and I started blending it together using a little bit of water. Now, I haven't quite perfected this technique. This is something that I am still a little struggling with. So this is where I've made my first huge mistake in the filming of this video, and I'll show you here. Let me just spin the camera. So first off, I'm using a different microphone than what I usually use. So Miniac would be absolutely, or Scott from Miniac would be absolutely not happy with this video. But as you can see here, I have completely painted one of my cutters. However, my camera was not filming. Now, I obviously still have some things to do, some widgets and some washes or whatnot, but for the most part, I wanted to leave it this bright, color like this. So luckily, as you can see in the background here, I have more I can paint, but yeah, I got no footage from this guy. Oh well. So moving on. I don't know why they gave us these particular bases with those flight stands, but I decided to use my drill and drill a little hole in the center. And of course it wasn't big enough, so I took my X-Acto knife. And if you do this, please be careful. X-Acto knives are sharp. But I made a big enough hole for that pin to sit in, so the flight stand will go on. Now, for the Escher, I decided to slap chop this because I figured it would speed things up a little bit, and I ended up actually not liking the initial colors that came out, even though I pushed these highlights. And as you can see, I'm actually using my first Pro Acryl color. I'm using the Monument Hobbies stuff. I got a bold titanium white because everybody says that their bold titanium white is the best. So why not give it a shot? So as you can see here, this is me putting the Gulliman flesh contrast over top of her stomach, and it turned out way too dark and I didn't like it. So what I did was I took some water, and you can do this especially with contrast paints. I took some water and I basically put it all over that painted area, and I wiped all of that paint off. So I put that to the side so it could dry, and I took out some regular paints for her skin because the skin was just showing up way too dark. So this is my old go-to of the Bugman's Glow, which is what's going on here. And then once I got that on, I did a little bit of Cadian flesh and a little bit of the Kislev flesh as well for the mid-tones and then the top highlights. Now, you guys have seen me do this before. This is kind of my go-to Caucasian color scheme, or for basically anything that I paint, any kind of model that I paint that has that Caucasian skin that I want. I believe I'm also going to try doing probably a darker skin tone on a couple of these ladies. Since I have 3 more to do, but for this one, because I am better at painting the Caucasian skin because I've done so much of it, I decided for this particular one just to go with the Caucasian skin tone, and because I also have a lot of this paint left. I'm trying to use it up so I can start buying other paints. I'd like to try more of the Monument Hobbies stuff because I do like the white. The white actually came out really good. I actually dry brushed this model as well with the same bold titanium white, and I think it turned out pretty good. It doesn't look very chalky. Not as chalky as some of the other paints like White Scar. I haven't tried the new White Scar, but the old White Scar was terrible. So, considering that this is all Bugman's Glow, basically this is just me blocking in that base coat. Now, after blocking in the base coat for the flesh, I went back and I decided to throw a little bit of contrast onto the model this time to see if the other contrast paints would show up a little bit better. And they did, actually. So I don't know if that first one, maybe I just didn't put enough white on it, whatever the case may be. But I like the way this one is turning out. I used the contrast yellow. It's actually the darker yellow. That would be Eandon yellow, which is the older contrast. I still have a big bottle of this stuff. I got it specifically for my Eschers. So after doing that, I painted up the edges of her pants with kind of a grayish blue. I used Space Wolves gray for this one, and that gives her pants kind of almost a blue jeans sort of a look, and this is kind of my go-to for blue jeans and things like that. Now, I'm also having a hard time holding on to the model. I didn't realize how bad it was going to be with just me trying to hold on to that paper clip. But what I'm using here is I'm using Rattling Grime for her boots instead of using the Black Templar, because I wanted something that was a little less, I guess a little more opaque, close, or a little closer to the transparent side of opaque instead of Black Templar, which it's a good contrast paint, but it's a very strong contrast paint as well. Now, for her bracers, I used Gargax Sewer, and for her belt, I also used Gargax Sewer. And that actually is between Rattling Grime and Gargax Sewer. Those are two of my actual favorite contrast paints right now, because they both cover very well, and the contrast side of things, it works really, really well. You get those different levels of contrast. Now, for her belt, I used a little bit of Retributor Armor, and I also painted her little hair tie, whatever that thing is, that little metal hair tie. I painted that with Retributor Armor as well to make it kind of a shiny gold. And then moving on from there, the next thing I did was the metallics. So for her mask, for the fin that is literally sitting between her butt cheeks for whatever reason, and for her plates that are on her butt cheeks as well as the knee pads, I used plate mail metal from the Army Painter, because I have a couple of bottles of this stuff that I'm also trying to get rid of so I can move on. So this stuff, I liked it at first, but I'm finding that it doesn't cover very well, not as well as I would like it to. So, I mean, it's not bad. It's just, I don't know. It requires 2 coats usually to make it completely covered, and to make sure there's nothing peeking through. Like if you spill any colors on this, like I do have a streak of yellow on that one butt plate, and I ended up having to paint another layer of metal over top of that just to kind of get it to show up properly. And it really, in the end, it's not that bad. It's just I prefer a metallic paint that has a little bit of a better coverage to it. So the knee pads, I also used Gargax Sewer on the knee pads, and the the contrast there sets off against that metal really, really well. I again, Gargax Sewer is one of my favorite paints at the moment. One of my favorite contrast paints, anyway. So to move on here, I used Eldari Emerald on all of her hair, and in the center of the rebreather mask that she's wearing where the fins are, I also put a dab of Eldari Emerald in there as well to kind of green things out and make it look nice. Eldari Emerald is it's an interesting contrast paint. I like it, but I've been able to use it a lot more than I thought, actually, with my Far Stalkers and with my the other kill team. Goodness, I don't remember the name of them now. Oh, the Void Scarred Corsairs. So here you can see me I added a little bit of the Cadian flesh tone to Bugman's Glow, and I am now putting that on the more raised parts of the muscles to give her muscles a little more definition and show that there is a little bit of light reflection on her skin. Now, once I was done with that, I actually went back and I did a pure Cadian flesh tone on a smaller area, and then I mixed a little bit of Kislev flesh into it, and I painted that in an even smaller area, and then I used just a single dot or line of Kislev flesh on some of the upper areas to give it kind of that extra shine, to make it look like like her skin has that sun-beaten highlight on the very top there, and that's something that's a kind of a normal technique. You can find that anywhere, and there are people that are way better at it than I am, but I think she turned out pretty good, honestly. I think there's enough definition there to where you can tell that it's not just a flat model. Now, I did go back here, and this is me adding a wash. I used the dark tone from the Army Painter because I ran out of Nuln Oil. Shame on me. Anyway, I ended up using dark tone on all of the metal, and this is pretty much one of the few washes that I'm using for this particular model. I used dark tone and I used strong tone as well, but I tried not to use the strong tone on anything I wanted to remain bright and shiny. I used a little bit of strong tone on her chest armor, the the armored bustier, whatever the hell that thing is that they wear, and I used a little bit of strong tone and dark tone on the bike itself to kind of darken things down. So after I was done with that, I scraped a little bit of that glue off, and as you can see, you pretty much only have to just pop the model in there. Now, I did pre-line up the handlebars there, and I made sure that the handlebars were close enough. Anyway, you can see here, I ended up putting a little bit of a Citadel texture paste on there, and then once that was dry, I put just a little bit of this cosmic glue down, and to make it look like there was like an oil spill or maybe just a little bit of sludge from the ash waste. And I used this also on my ash waste nomads to make it look like there was some sort of nasty sludge on there. And then I took that strong tone and I put that over top of all of the texture paint. Now, I may eventually go back and do a dry brush as well, but I also figured out that the rod there is just a hair too much, so I went back and snipped just a little bit off. Anyway, this is it. This is what the first one looked like, and I'm actually quite happy with the way it turned out, and I'm happy with that freehand job I did there with the lightning bolt. I'm improving. Things are getting better. Anyway, please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.